I know it's the last day. That wasn't bad, actually. I will give you some credit. But nonetheless, I know it's the last day. I know we're the last thing before you get to leave. How are you guys doing? Oh, that's so much better. It sounds like there's 20 people in here. Good. No, seriously, I'm delighted that you're all here. For those of you that don't remember me, and I'm sure most of you do, I'm Andy. I have had the honor of being on the program committee here this year. Alongside of that work, I'm involved in IDEMIA. I'm involved in a couple of standards bodies. There's a few other consulting things that I do along the side. I've been around the industry for a while. I think we've done a good job this week, and the reason I say that is that I'm stood backstage with the AV guys, and they're looking at me going, these phishing-resistant credentials, that's a thing, right? Yes, it is. But we're not going to talk about that for the next 30 minutes or so. What we're going to talk about is digital identity wallets, and you will be delighted to know that you're not going to have to listen to me for 35 minutes. I have a group of much cleverer, much more intelligent, much more entertaining and amusing people who are going to come and be on a panel with me. The biggest problem I'm going to have is keeping them quiet. I can hear them already. Managing the panel is a non-trivial exercise, but that's okay because there will still be interesting material, I promise. And here they are. Thank you, Nishant. Fabulous. It's that music again. Excellent. So what we're going to do first is, you all know who I am. We've done that part. We're going to start at the far end, and we're going to find out who everybody is whilst I sit down. Go.
I'm already setting, though.
Just don't be a troublemaker.
Nishant, Kaushik, I'm the CTO at Uniken. I lead our product team in building our identity and security platform that deals with creating phishing-resistant customers.
Hi, I'm Teresa Wu. I work for IDEMIA. I manage their smart credential business in North America. So smart card, smart token, digital identities in the commercial and the federal space.
And I'm Christine Owen. I am the field CTO of One Cosmos.
And I'm Heather Flanagan, principal at Spherical Cloud Consulting. And mostly, if you deal with standards, you probably know me. And if you don't deal with standards, you should.
Splendid. So we're going to start with what I thought was a really easy question when I wrote these down. Just to set expectations, what's going to happen here is I'm going to say some words, and then these people will speak, right? I'm not going to ask them questions. That seems utterly redundant, because I just have to say a thing, and they will suddenly become very voluble about it. So I thought to myself, an interesting thing to talk about, because I think it would be really easy, would be the next question. And then it turns out over the last couple of days that we have at least 8 opinions represented in these 5 people. So here we go. What is a digital identity wallet? Ah! I'm sorry, wait. Was there an audience response? Thank you. Is it a gluten-free, free-range organ? No, it's not any of those things. Thank you, Ian. What is a digital identity wallet? Go.
So now my answer already got stolen, so I don't know what to do anymore. So I will hand it over to.
So in my government digital identity world, a digital identity wallet is what a government agency create to enable to provision the citizen identity in a cryptographically secure framework, right? Whether it's an applet, whether it is on a smart card, that digital identity wallet is where the citizen can use to assert their identity in person or online.
Okay.
So I actually didn't even think of it as I'm being on a smart card. I just learned something today. That's really smart.
My job is done.
Yeah, I'm going to learn a lot today. I actually think of it as a grouping of generally verified attributes. They don't have to all be verified, but preferred, that are placed in a cryptographic container that is built to standards such as W3C or ISO.
I find this question deeply disturbing. Not because of tacos, but because I don't know the answer. As far as I'm aware, there is no technical specification for a wallet. There's lots of specifications for credentials that go in the wallet. And there's lots of pilots and efforts and frameworks and regulations that say wallets should kind of probably, we think, maybe do the following, we hope. Which is, you know, one way to go about figuring out what you want your standard to be, but since this is the kind of thing being deployed and impacting millions upon millions of people, I'm a little bit anxious that that's the hand-wavy definition that we currently have available.
And since Ian stole my answer, I will switch to the other opinion of the 8 that we had, which is, in talking to folks this week, I kind of landed on a wallet as is being expected from businesses is a new way or a new form of identity data delivery to businesses. It's an identity data delivery mechanism, or if I were to go with the 4 horses, pillars of identity that Ian laid out, it is actually a full-fledged identity system because it requires all those 4 pillars. Whereas most folks are focused on 2 of those, which is the data part and the standards part, and are completely missing out the other 2 elements, which is orchestration and policy.
Interesting. So that sounds to me as though you just put the whole identity stack on everyone's mobile phone and took it away from the enterprise.
But I never said it is mobile.
Interesting.
I did not imply that a wallet can only be an app or must be an app.
Interesting. And
Oh,
that
has
comes
to be
back
on
to
a
your smart
phone.
card point, right?
But I think people don't realize it, that we have been trying to do this identity wallet for a while, not on the Asia or mobile phone. Those that are from Europe or from Asia, they have a national ID card that is cryptographically chip enabled on the card. And we look at the first payment wallet, they call it payment wallet, it's actually on a payment card, not on the phone. So I think that if we need to, the legacy of a wallet, didn't start with the phone.
Okay. So it sounds like we have a vague idea of what a wallet is, at least. Do we have a vague idea of what a wallet is? Yes, maybe-ish. Okay, that sounds like a good summary.
We have failed.
We're supposed to confuse you.
Maybe not yet, so.
That was the goal.
Yeah.
Maybe in 5 years.
Maybe in 5 years, but that slide doesn't come till later, so hold on. Okay, so we have a vague idea. You, Heather, mentioned standards, and it seems to me that one of the ways of coalescing around an actual answer is some standards. So what is the state of play with standards? And I know you alluded to some of this, but let's dig into that a little bit.
So you can go about standards development in 2 broad ways, right? You can either go about it with all right, we think we have a problem, let's get together, talk about a framework, get something like a version.
Did you say taco about a framework?
Give me your microphone. Give me your microphone. Take that away from me. That you can get the framework, you can get your version .1 of your draft specification out there, build on it, see how it works, start with some prototypes, and go forward. Great. Or you can be of a different mindset. By the way, neither of these are wrong. The other mindset is to say, let the market decide. Let's get a bunch of things out there and see which one wins, which is kind of what we're doing with wallets. I can't say there's a state of the standard. There's the Open Wallet Foundation. They're doing some really great work, but their great work is focusing on development tools, like building libraries. Can we make interoperable libraries here? They have very explicitly stated they are not a standards organization. They are not trying to standardize anything. There's the Architecture Reference Framework in the EU. Again, that's something where you've got a framework, a model, something that you can kind of work towards, but it's not a technical specification in the way that I think of standards. So yeah, it's fuzzy.
Yeah.
What do you think about the work that NCCOE is doing around mobile driver's license?
That's technically not wallet.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think what Heather's getting at is standard around the wallet.
Wallet itself.
A lot of standard around the credentials. That's true. And I think that's probably the silver lining in Heather's concern is that there are standard work being done on the credential level. And oftentimes, maybe the wallet, the container of these credentials may not as important if the credential itself is interoperable and can be shared and can be used. But I see what you're saying is that there are a distinction between a standard around the credentials and standard around the wallet.
Mm-hmm.
So you said something interesting, which is that one approach is to let the market decide.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some concerns about that in this particular. I'm doing the thing that moderators are not supposed to do now, which is I'm expressing an opinion.
I have concerns
And
about
breaking
this
the
too.
fifth wall.
So
Yeah.
my concern here is that we're talking about a piece of infrastructure which is going to handle personal data.
Yeah.
And if we do that badly at scale, we're going to have a really, really big problem.
Uh-huh.
And it's not a problem that's just about, this technology won't do what we all think, or at least some of us think it might enable us to do. It's a really fundamentally big societal level problem. I have some concerns about let the market decide for this one.
Oh, me too. And if we weren't on stage, I would. At this point is usually when I start jumping up and down, getting really anxious. But
It's a very,
Are
very
you going to
solid
have a
stage.
Tom Cruise moment?
no, I'm good. I'm calm.
You're not wrong is really all I have to say. I think you're right. I think that there are certain companies that I know of that I feel like are doing it the right way, and I put that in quotes, and then there are some that I think are maybe not doing it in a way I would prefer, but
there isn't a standard, and so it's hard to know how to fix that. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got some standards around the credentials themselves, and those are mostly good.
Mostly.
Okay. Mostly good is not, oh, no, wait.
is standards work ever done, though?
Well, that's a fair point, right? Yeah, yeah. But the container itself is still something that we have a challenge around, right? Okay.
I want to say one thing about the credentials, though.
Please do.
That I think some people tend to forget a little bit. So I get to sit in the W3C and the IATF, and then I watch with popcorn from a distance about ISO, where they're all working on credential standards. And you tend to forget the underlying assumption that's going into those specifications, and that underlying assumption really matters. ISO's MDocs were built with a thought of the very structured data of a driver's license or a passport, very, very structured. W3C verifiable credentials, as well as the IATF selective disclosure JSON Web Token, SDJOTs, they're coming from the perspective of, hey, loyalty card for your supermarket. It's just wildly open. And when you come at the credentials with those underlying, it can either be used, yes, back and forth, sure, but you've made design choices starting from that bottom up, and people don't always think about those choices.
Right, yeah. And so I think that then starts to lead me into a bunch of questions about risks and mitigations and, I mean, already we're thinking about, just from this conversation, right, we're thinking about risks around privacy, we're thinking about risks around security, we're thinking about risks around usability, right? I mean, I know we've talked about this a lot, I suspect everybody else has, but if there are lots of wallets to choose from, which one do I choose? How do I move from one to another? Those are novel risks for the individual. There are probably a whole set of risks for business that we haven't necessarily thought about. So maybe we can surface some of those, and maybe there are thoughts around some mitigations that we might be able to apply, absent we still don't know what a wallet is.
Well, I think, as you said, because it's risks and mitigation, maybe it starts from use cases. Like all things we should be doing in identities, it goes back to what are people trying to accomplish with the wallet, whatever form it takes, and can we actually deliver on that promise without introducing those risks, right? So you have to start from the use cases. And we tend to start from the standards and the technology point of view and say, look, I can do this. Who wants to use this the way I have defined it? that it should be used. And I think that's one of the challenges we have is mitigation starts with saying, let's first talk about what are the use cases we're trying to do here and what is it we're actually trying to do. Wallets discussions typically start from the perspective of, as I said, it's an identity data delivery mechanism that is trying to put the user at the center of the ceremony and therefore provide them control. That is a very admirable, correct use case, but it has huge, massive implications in terms of shifting blame, liability, et cetera, onto users, and we tend not to think about that when we start thinking about, well, let's just make everything a consent ceremony, and they will figure out what I can share, and now the business can, and essentially we're going to end, to your point, when we end up with too many wallets, we end up with wallet fatigue, we end up with presentation fatigue, and then people just start sharing because like, I just want to get to where I want to get to.
And so I think that, for me, is the point, right? Is that a lot of the use cases, quote unquote, that we tend to talk about, especially in these sorts of environments, tend to be either technically driven use cases or, in some cases, I guess, small e ethically driven use cases, right? It would be good if people had control over their stuff. Fine. What most people want to do is just to do stuff. And to me, one of the wonders of Passkey is that it makes life easier for people. It has a bunch of other benefits, right, that we all care about around security and great. Most people don't care. They just want it to work. They want their life in digital to be easier. And it seems to me that the whole wallet conversation, again, in these contexts, tends to forget that.
So you know what's really interesting is that in the U.S. especially, and I take generally the U.S. view since I am in the U.S., that people are freely giving away their attributes and their information all the time, and their face to Facebook and other places. And then when it comes to a place where it kind of makes more sense because we're going into a higher risk transaction or they're interacting with a government agency and we're trying to help them not have an identity theft against them, they then start to revolt. And then they start to say, to complain about the consent screens, and they don't want to click on consent. I really wonder, now I'm asking a question, I'm so sorry. I really wonder, how do we educate the general population on how to read consent screens well, on how to opt out of things? I know.
I have a strong opinion about this.
Oh, good.
So
Look at you, you're a participant now.
We need Mike's hat, so you can just put the hat on.
Right, take it on and off. Exactly, yeah. So my big thing, we're going to get diverted for a little bit about consent screens. Does anyone mind? Thank you, good. Because we're going there anyway, but I like you to have agency.
You consented to that,
Actually,
right?
I got to tell you, you didn't really get the consent through this consent screen. We just proved it.
Right. So I think consent screens have been a red herring in the sense of the way they've been implemented. And by that I mean businesses are making decisions about how they put that consent screen in front of people that they could choose to do otherwise. And there are some really good examples around of, consent screens and particularly cookie consent screens, where you look at the business flow and you say to yourself, yeah, what they're actually doing here is just forcing me to say yes, but trying to hide behind something that to a regulator makes it look like they're saying no, right? And that's not quite, I think, what the regulation was trying to do. I think the regulation was trying to say there are better ways to operate your business. And there are, right? Nobody was saying you shouldn't collect this information. They were simply saying you might as well collect information that you can use.
And that goes back to the risks part, right? Which is
right.
Being overly prescriptive or dogmatic about approaches, strategies, and in some cases even standards, runs a serious risk in forcing people down paths that may work in certain jurisdictions, may not work in other jurisdictions. The reason I brought up the fact that I explicitly exclude the word mobile from wallet is because I deal with a lot of jurisdictions where it is a very serious concern for them that we need digital identity presentation, verified or verifiable digital identity presentation without requiring the person to have a smartphone.
Yeah.
Without the person having a personal device of any sort. How do we accomplish that? There's established ways, as Teresa pointed out.
Yeah.
But even those have risks and limitations that force us down certain paths.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there's a whole bunch of challenges around availability and accessibility and recovery. We didn't even talk about some of the risks around recovery here, right? I mean, we thought that was hard for passkey, right? I mean, this is a whole nother level of challenge, right? Like, if I've dropped my smartphone in my beer, how do I get my wallet back?
I want to ask the questions. I lost my voice. I'm sorry.
Teresa had too much fun last night. That's the problem.
Whoever lost their real wallet?
Oh, that's a good question. Did anyone ever lose their actual, real, physical wallet?
Oh, yes, I remember when you lost your wallet over there, Jamie.
Was it at the passwordless party?
No. We do not have time for this story. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to make you do that again. How many people put their hands up just now? Lost their wallet, physical, actual wallet, or passport?
That's a pretty large amount.
It's a large number of people.
I have nightmares about losing my passport.
Yes.
Also less passport.
I
Travel
understand
anxiety
why.
for the win.
Yeah, I get it. So I think that's a really interesting point, Teresa, right? Which is we've all done it at some point. In fact, actually, how many people have ever lost a smartphone or dropped it in beer? It's a smaller number, but it's still not zero. So wow, percentage-wise, the panel is way worse than the audience on this one. Okay, so there's a bunch of really interesting risks around that. And the other risk we didn't talk about, and I know, Christine, you spoke about this a little bit this morning, but some of the security risks and maybe security opportunities around wallets.
I don't know where I'm going with this.
I don't either. We'll find out.
What did I talk about? I
talked
blinked
about
it out
some
after.
interesting intersections between things like passkey and wallet.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. I just need you
You're
to
very
wind
welcome.
me up a little more.
I just want credit. I was paying attention to Christine's presentation.
Yes, I was not paying attention. So the way that I see this is why I think wallets are really cool, and I'm really excited about it, and I get really animated, just like Heather, and I can jump up and down, is because I really see, I see wallets as a way to have a verified identity or a verified credential, and in that case, it's a reusable identity, and I can enroll somewhere with those attributes that are verified, and then I can attach a passkey to it, and I can use a passkey over and over again to continue to re-authenticate into that relying party. But if I want to get into my wallet, how am I going to get in there? Well, I should probably have a passkey because I got some really important stuff in that wallet that hopefully I don't lose, but no. It's been a while, so knock on wood. So I think that those two things are really important to go hand in hand. The other really interesting thing is that reusable identity or a wallet can also be used for account recovery for places where, generally this happens when there's passwords involved, but we're seeing that happen a lot where we need to do some sort of identity vetting to be able to allow for a person to recover their account because we don't want to have social engineering happen. That, of course, despite all of this, we also have to stay really ahead of the bad guys. And that's the hardest part, right? We're constantly trying to be just this much faster than the bad guys so that they can't get into the wallet or they can't figure out how to spoof the verified credential to be able to use it to recover an account.
That's really interesting. Years ago, I was involved in Identity Federation for a while, and we used to have this question about the whole keys to the kingdom problem, and you suddenly made me go, if somebody gets hold of my phone, and then suddenly they have access to my whole wallet and all my verified credentials, and they can. That's an interesting
challenge. You said the magic word. You said federation, and thereby have invoked the header.
I have, yes.
So talking about risks.
We're talking about risks in federation.
You're talking about risks, and then my name comes up. I'm not sure I'm okay with this. Wait.
No, it was the federation.
It was the federation.
Well, the federation is, everything we've talked about with credentials, not as much with wallets, but perhaps with some, does boil down to, okay, well, you've got this stuff. It does secure things. Woo. How do you trust it? Well, you trust it because it's been signed. Who has it been signed by? What is the trust infrastructure underneath all of this thing? Is it pure PKI? Well, you still got a root of trust. Who owns that? And that's a lot of what the federation infrastructure that I've been working with for the last 20 years has been doing, because yes, it's SAML-based, and I know how much we all love SAML, which is not at all. But that's what they do. They do multilateral trust federations, and I think a lot of what we're going to see in this brave new world of wallets and lowercase verifiable credentials really needs to learn some lessons rather than say, oh man, that was SAML, we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Because it's relevant.
Yeah.
But does that, to then that point, and I think a point you brought up in your talk this morning, does that put the wallet at the center of being the trust broker in the federation architecture that you're describing in some sense, which is, do I need to trust the credential, or can I just simply trust the wallet because the wallet trusts the credential?
I don't think it's going to be a trust the wallet and therefore life is good. Because
Teresa has opinions.
Can Teresa?
I want to try to take advantage of the fact that she can't
How much can we spin up Teresa while she can't talk? That's what I want to know.
It's going to be really hard. She's going to be really screaming.
You guys have no advantage. Like suddenly my voice just broke on stage.
So sorry.
I'm so sorry. Having deployed several MDL projects in the state, right, the last 18 months, I would say the header is concerned about the trust. You can differentiate like where you want to verify it, where you want to pay how you can trust the credentials, but then you have to trust there's a chain of security, the chain of trust. Yeah. You have to trust the credential first. You have to trust the issuance process. Then trust the credentials, then trust the wallet. The wallet's not going to be that one wallet to rule it all. I don't believe that.
Right.
No.
That's helpful. Okay. So I feel slightly bad because we sort of started out with this, in our heads, this premise that, well, but wallets are interesting and we should be talking about them because they can do cool things. And then we've spent 26 minutes talking about all the problems. So why are we here, right? Is it actually worth us pursuing this wallet thing? And I think I know what the answer is, but what are the opportunities? Why should we be doing this?
Well, I'll kind of say that the reason I feel like we ended up spending so much time talking about all the issues and the concerns we have is because we do see it as a significant part of the future, that it is the thing that we're going to be delivering. I think in many ways, to me, it's a given. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I'm more focused on, given that it is a given, how do I make sure it is a good given?
Right.
And we get to the right place in the right way, in the most inclusive and ethical way, such that we're not developing, and I'm only picking, not developing a US-centric perspective on how wallets should work, but have a global perspective. And I'm not criticizing, it's genuinely the fact that a lot of the development is happening in localized formats.
No, I totally agree.
In localized formats,
so I totally agree with you.
Huge amount of issue.
And quite frankly, yes, and actually it's the developing countries that are doing it better, faster, and they're the fast adopters. That's why I was thinking better. And I totally agree. And the reason why I say that I'm US-centric here is because I had a conversation with someone from Europe, and I realized that the take of how it works in the US maybe does not work the same in Europe. And that's okay. We're all different, and there are laws, privacy laws in the EU that we don't exist here for whatever reason. But I think that in real quick. But I do think that the reality is that the use cases regardless are the same, right? The whole point is to take an identity and reuse it over and over again so that I can make my life easier when I'm interacting and need to pass verified attributes. What did I say, Heather?
You said that, yeah, it's okay. It's different. It doesn't quite work. I'm going to be in Europe in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I travel a lot. I need this to be global because I'm traveling constantly.
And people are actually expecting it to be global.
Yeah.
And there is a huge amount of effort and discussion going on about global interoperability, cross-border use cases, and the fact and faster isn't always better. You're right.
Yeah.
They are, in many places, they are going faster. Doesn't mean that they're actually doing it better. They're taking a lot of shortcuts.
Yeah.
Right.
They're doing exactly what Heather is trying to point out, which is not learning the lessons of the past and not incorporating that, and we are going to end up in a different kind of mess. Yeah.
So I think, here, let me try to restate this. The reason why I'm saying it's faster is better in this case is because it's a fast failure, so we get to see what didn't work, what does work and what doesn't work. I'm really upsetting her. No, but I really do think that we need to understand how it's working and how it's not in other places. And then we can learn from the lessons. Because, I'm so sorry, Heather. She's gonna murder me. Because our standards we're in a place where we don't really understand how wallets are gonna be adopted by people. And it's a chicken or an egg scenario. Do we create the whole standards and framework, but then people don't adopt it the way we think it should be? Or do we have it happen where it's a lot of different places are experimenting and we see what works best?
And what we're going to do now is we're going to leave that question for the future.
So when you're listening to Bolero on the plane.
There you go.
I'm not talking.
So this is exactly what I knew was going to happen with this panel, is we'd actually get stuck into the conversation and then we'd run out of time and we'd be desperate to say more, and we will do that, but very, very quickly, we're going to wrap things up. Do we think that wallets have a future, or do they think they will fail? Nishant, go.
I already answered it.
Okay, good. Teresa, very quietly, go.
Future.
Future.
Good.
Questions irrelevant.
Oh. Okay.
And we're out of time. Yay!
Splendid. So yes, we are. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it was interesting and informative and instructive. I suspect there'll be more conversations like this to come. Thank you to my wonderful panelists. And Andrew Shikar is going to come up and round everything up for us. Thank you.